started at Ainsley in 1964 with my first coach, Ralph Lewis, who was an amazing man who always attended training in a suit because he'd just finished work. But Dad took Billy and I there in 1964, and Ralph said straight up, "Dave, take that little fella home. He's too young." And as we still laugh and joke about it today, he was referring to Bill, not me. So they were the early days at Ainsley Oval. Well, we were in Ipaima Street, which is not that far from Ainsley Oval and the club, and it was good proximity to get to and from training in those days. And as it turned out, Dave eventually became a caterer at the Ainsley Football Club, and then was a snooker and billiards player with his good friend Reg Venables. So we were never far from the club, and in addition to that, we did then and still do today have a close connection with the Ainsley Baseball Club. So it was 12 months of the year for us around Ainsley and the Ainsley Footy Club and the Ainsley Baseball Club. When we lost Ainsley Oval to rugby and we had to relocate training to other venues, and training at Epic, which was the showground in those days, now Epic, was probably the coldest place on earth. So getting Alan Ray Oval back from rugby was a massive time in the club, and it's good to be back at the Oval and with even the junior, and I love seeing the under 8s or whatever they are, the juniors play there, and the girls, and train there each day when I get down there. Catching up with the guys that I played with, and keeping in touch with them, how they're going individually and personally, and how's life, which is good. And I also like the connection and contact with new players that come to the club and finding out about where they've come from, where they've played their footy, what their aspirations are, and then just see how they progress at Ainsley with their careers. In '78, I had Ralph Rendell, one of those fortunate enough to have Ralph as a coach. And Ralph was had his own ways. He was a unique individual, as we all know, a great man. And he had a passion for football like no other. He had his own ways. He could be aggressive and yet sincere, and so genuine with every boy that he had in his team. In '78, I had Ralph Rendell, one of those fortunate enough to have Ralph as a coach. And Ralph was had his own ways. He was a unique individual, as we all know, a great man. And he had a passion for football like no other. He had his own ways. He could be aggressive and yet sincere, and so genuine with every boy that he had in his team. You get to be starting to grow up and become a 17 or 18-year-old where there are some conflict to enter your life and other distractions and so on. So as an under-19 coach, initially I had a Bob McCorry, who we won the 77 under-19 premiership, and he was my first under-19 coach, and a great coach and a good leader for the group of boys that we had. But it's had a fairly dramatic impact on my daily life because the business I'm in is conferences, and pretty much it's shut down, so there's nothing there. So I'm at home, still working on events for the future, but Jane's at home as well. So we're in the same house, but it's meant an adjustment for everyone. We're all in the same boat here, but it affects some more than others. But doing a lot more walking. Spending a lot more, bit more time in the garden, but it's a good time to reflect on what we've got and where we're trying to make come up with some plans for the future. The business world is completely thrown upside down, so it's about sort of coming up with some ideas probably trying to do some alternate things in my world. The COVID's also affected the club, the licensed club, been closed for probably nearly 2 months now.
Yeah.
Fortunately, it looks like there's some light at the end of the tunnel, but we keep our fingers crossed there. See some of my mates. Love watching the footy, and I love watching the footy and seeing some of the senior statesmen, the Barry Browning, Jimmy Muir and so on, get around the footy as well. It's great to see them there. So I miss them. I miss seeing my mates down at the footy, catching up with Rourke, Jono, Toysey, and just seeing the boys and seeing how they're progressing, how their footy career's going. In particular, some of the boys of my mates, the Richardsons and the Muirs and the Phillips and so on, that are one of the main reasons I like to go down there.
Yeah.
To see the women's football come as far as it has in such a short space of time, and to see some daughters of some of my mates playing, April Scholes and Ellie Bishop, they're just a couple. My niece plays, unfortunately plays for the wrong club, but and Tubby's girlfriend Meg plays, and she plays for the wrong club, but we'll get there. In the early days, there was a guy called Alan Bonghetti that was a fairly spectacular full forward that would have a stream of kids following him from one end to the other. You don't see that much these days, but Bongo was an amazing high-flying full forward that could kick a goal from anywhere. So he was as interesting as anyone back in those days. But Peter Banfield was a great player. Loved watching him as a little on-baller. He was dynamic and tough guy. And you had Aldo DePetta. All sorts of players, apart from the range of juniors that had come through, to be great senior players. Seeing a Richo, yourself, Bish, and it goes on, Robbie Baxter. We had a great crew of young juniors that came through that did it for me. It made a joy going to the footy. Well, I think probably one of the most amazing players over the last couple of years has been Simon Horner. He was here and then went and returned and to win a BNF and a flag, and to make an impact the way he does on a football field where you can play in the ruck and then just have a rest on the wing is one of the most amazing things I've seen.
You're not wrong.
But players like Nick Payne, I followed from basically his first couple of games of football as a young junior right through to his senior years, and watch Nick come and go. The list goes on. You don't win 4 in a row again in this time without having a good depth to your playing list.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we've got so many great, good, consistent players.